On my birthday, I wrote in the family group, "I miss you." No one replied. Later, my son texted, "We're on vacation. Don't be dramatic." That same night, I decided to cut off their access to the account they used. 37 missed calls. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The clock on my kitchen wall read 7:30 in the morning when I woke up on my 63rd birthday. The house felt emptier than usual, though I'd been living alone for the past 3 years since Martha passed. I made my coffee the same way I had for 40 years, 2 sugars, a splash of cream, and sat at the kitchen table where we used to share breakfast every morning. I stared at my phone, hoping maybe someone had remembered. Nothing. No calls, no texts, no messages. The silence felt heavier than the morning fog outside my window. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the family group chat. There were 12 people in it. My 3 children, their spouses, my grandchildren old enough to have phones. I typed and deleted several messages before settling on something simple. "Missing you all today. Hope everyone is doing well." I hit send and immediately felt foolish. It sounded desperate, didn't it? But maybe, just maybe, someone would remember what day it was. An hour passed. Then 2. I watched the little indicators show that people had read the message. Leonard read it at 12:15. My daughter Sarah saw it at 1:20. Even my grandson Jake, who was always glued to his phone, had read it by 2 o'clock. Nobody responded. I tried to distract myself by working in the garden. Martha always said my tomatoes were the best in the neighborhood, and I'd kept them going even after she was gone. But every few minutes I found myself checking my phone, hoping to see that little notification bubble. At 4:30, my phone finally buzzed. My heart jumped, thinking maybe someone had remembered. It was Leonard. "We're on vacation in the Bahamas. Don't be so dramatic, Dad." I read the message 3 times, each time feeling something crack a little more inside my chest. Dramatic. He called me dramatic for missing my family on my birthday. I sat down heavily on the porch steps, my phone still in my hands. The worst part wasn't that they forgot my birthday. It was the word dramatic, like wanting to hear from your children on the day you were born was asking too much. Like reaching out to the people you'd raised and supported for decades was some kind of burden. I thought about Leonard's vacation in the Bahamas. Last month, he'd called me in a panic because his credit card was maxed out and he needed $1,500 for some emergency. I'd transferred the money without question, like I always did. He never mentioned any vacation plans then. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the day. As evening approached, I realized I'd spent my entire birthday waiting for scraps of attention from people who couldn't even spare 10 seconds to type, "Happy birthday, Dad." I made myself a simple dinner, leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and ate it alone while watching the news. The weatherman was talking about a storm system moving in from the west. I found myself thinking about storms, about how they clear the air, wash everything clean. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I kept thinking about Leonard's message. Don't be so dramatic. When had expressing love for your family become dramatic? When had missing your children become something to be dismissed? I thought about all the times I'd sent money without being asked. The time Sarah needed $3,000 for her kitchen renovation. When my youngest, Mike, couldn't make his mortgage payment and needed $2,500 to avoid foreclosure. The countless times I'd covered car repairs, medical bills, school expenses for the grandkids. Never once had I called them dramatic for asking. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my banking app. The joint account I'd set up years ago for family emergencies showed a balance of $47,300. I'd been adding money to it regularly, thinking it would give everyone peace of mind, knowing help was always available. Looking at that number, I realized something that made my stomach turn. They weren't on vacation despite being broke. They were on vacation because they knew I'd always be there to catch them when they fell. My safety net had become their piggy bank. The house creaked around me as it settled for the night. I'd bought this house 35 years ago, back when the kids were small and the future seemed full of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. Now it felt like a museum to a family that had moved on without me. I thought about Martha, about how she used to worry that we were making things too easy for the kids. "They need to learn to stand on their own feet, Vincent," she'd say whenever I'd helped them out of another financial jam. I'd always told her we were just being good parents, that family helps family. But lying there in the dark, I wondered if Martha had been right all along. Had my help become an expectation? Had my love become something they took for granted because it was always freely given? My 63rd birthday was ending, and I was more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. But somewhere in that loneliness, Something else was growing. A quiet anger, maybe, or just a tired recognition that something had to change. The storm the weatherman mentioned was supposed to hit tomorrow night. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I found myself hoping it would be a big one. I woke up the next morning with Leonard's words still echoing in my head. "Don't be so dramatic." The phrase had settled into my bones overnight, and I couldn't shake the bitter taste it left in my mouth. After my morning coffee, I sat at Martha's old writing desk and pulled out the folder where I kept all our financial documents. The joint account statements were filed neatly, just like she would have done. I spread them across the desk and started going through the transactions from the past year. March 15th, $2,500 to Leonard for car trouble. April 2nd, $1,800 to Sarah for unexpected medical bills. May 20th, $3,200 to Mike when his business had a slow month. The list went on and on. In 12 months, I'd transferred $28,700 to that account, $28,000 of my retirement savings, my Social Security, the money Martha and I had carefully saved for our golden years. I picked up my reading glasses and looked closer at the withdrawal records. Sarah had taken $400 just last week for what she'd called groceries for the kids. But according to her social media posts, which I'd seen when my neighbor Mrs. Patterson showed me on her phone, Sarah had been posting pictures from expensive restaurants all month. Leonard's emergency from 6 weeks ago, the $1,500 he desperately needed. 2 days later, he'd posted photos from a golf resort. I remembered feeling proud that he could still enjoy himself despite his financial stress. Now I realized there had been no stress at all. The pattern was so clear I felt foolish for not seeing it before. They didn't call me for advice, for conversation, or just to check on their old dad. They called when they needed money, and I always said yes. Every single time. I thought about the birthday message I'd sent yesterday. Missing you all today. It wasn't dramatic, it was honest. I did miss them. I missed the children they used to be, before they learned that Dad was just an ATM with emotions. That afternoon, I called the bank. Patricia, the customer service representative I'd worked with for years, answered cheerfully, "Mr. Henderson, how can I help you today?" "Patricia, I need to make some changes to the joint account I have set up. Account ending in 7429. Of course. What kind of changes are we looking at?" My hand was steadier than I expected as I wrote down the account information. "I want to remove access for all secondary account holders, make it a single-owner account effective immediately." There was a pause. "Sir, that's certainly something we can do, but it's a significant change. Are you sure you want to remove all other parties' access?" I thought about Leonard's smirk in that vacation photo Mrs. Patterson had shown me. His sunglasses probably cost more than some people's monthly grocery budget. "Yes, Patricia, I'm absolutely sure." "All right. I'll need to verify some information with you, and then I can process that change. It should be effective by close of business today." The whole process took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to undo years of financial enabling. When I hung up the phone, the house felt different somehow. Quieter, but not in a lonely way, in a peaceful way. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning out Martha's closet, something I'd been putting off for 3 years. As I folded her sweaters and carefully placed them in donation boxes, I found myself thinking about the woman who'd shared this house with me for 37 years. Martha had been the practical one, the one who balanced our checkbook and questioned whether we should co-sign for Leonard's first car loan. She'd worried about teaching the kids responsibility, about the difference between helping and enabling. "Love them enough to let them struggle sometimes, Vincent," she'd said more than once. "How else will they learn they're strong enough to handle life on their own?" I thought I was showing love by always saying yes, by always being the solution to their problems. But maybe what I'd really been doing was showing them that I didn't believe they were capable of solving anything themselves. In the bottom of Martha's jewelry box, I found the card she'd given me on our last anniversary before she got sick. Her handwriting was already shaky from the medication, but her words were clear. "Thank you for 40 years of putting our family first. Now let's put each other first." We'd planned to travel after she retired. We'd talked about visiting Ireland, where her grandparents had come from. We'd dreamed about a little cabin by a lake somewhere quiet. Instead, we'd spent those years helping the kids through one crisis after another, putting our dreams on hold for their emergencies. As I placed Martha's wedding ring in the small velvet box where she'd kept it during her hospital stays, I made her a promise. I wouldn't waste whatever time I had left waiting for people who saw me as a bank account instead of a person. The phone rang around 6 o'clock. I glanced at the caller ID and saw Leonard's name. For the first time in years, I let it go to voicemail. 15 minutes later, it rang again. Sarah this time, then Mike, then Leonard again. I turned the phone off and made myself dinner. Real dinner this time, not just leftovers. I grilled a steak, made a salad, even opened a bottle of wine that Martha and I had been saving for a special occasion. As I ate, I watched the storm clouds gathering outside just like the weatherman had predicted. The wind was picking up, rattling the windows. But inside my house, for the first time in months, maybe years, everything felt calm. I thought about tomorrow, about the phone calls that would come when they realized what I'd done. There would be anger, probably, accusations. Maybe they'd call me dramatic again. But tonight, sitting in my kitchen with Martha's ring on the table beside me and the storm building outside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like myself again. The man who'd worked 2 jobs to put his kids through college. The man who'd built this house with his own hands. The man who'd loved his wife fiercely and raised 3 children the best way he knew how. That man deserved better than being forgotten on his birthday. That man deserved better than being called dramatic for missing his family. And starting tomorrow, that man was going to demand it. I turned my phone back on at 8 in the morning and immediately regretted it. The screen lit up with a cascade of notifications that made my stomach clench. 37 missed calls, 42 text messages, 15 voicemails. The calls had started around 9 the previous evening and continued through the night. Leonard had called 14 times, Sarah 11 times, Mike 12 times. Even my daughter-in-law Jessica had called, which was unusual since she rarely spoke to me directly. I poured my coffee with shaking hands and sat down to face whatever storm I'd unleashed. The first voicemail was from Leonard, left at 9:23 p.m. "Dad, what the hell is going on? The card got declined at dinner. Call me back immediately." His voice was tight with embarrassment and anger. I could hear restaurant noise in the background, the clink of glasses and low conversation. They'd been out for an expensive meal when they discovered the account was closed. The second message was from Sarah, 30 minutes later. "Dad, I tried to get cash for groceries and the ATM said insufficient funds. That's impossible. There's always money in that account. Something must be wrong with the bank's system. Call me back as soon as you get this." Even in crisis, she couldn't imagine that I might have made a deliberate choice. It had to be a mistake, a bank error, anything but the possibility that their financial safety net had been intentionally removed. By the third voicemail, Leonard's tone had shifted from annoyance to panic. "Dad, this isn't funny anymore. Jessica's credit card is maxed out, and we're stuck in Nassau with no way to pay for the hotel. I know you're probably asleep, but this is an emergency. We need you to fix this right now." I almost laughed at the irony. Now it was an emergency. Not my birthday, not wanting to hear from my children, but their inability to access my money. That was when things became urgent. The messages got increasingly desperate as the night wore on. Mike's voice cracked as he explained that his car payment was due the next day, and he'd been counting on the account to cover it. Sarah left a crying message about how she couldn't buy groceries for her children. But it was the last voicemail that really got to me. It was from Jessica, Leonard's wife, and her tone was different from the others, cold, calculating. "Vincent, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're embarrassing your son in front of his colleagues. We're at a work conference, and Leonard's boss offered to pay for our dinner tonight because Leonard's card was declined. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for him? You need to fix this before you damage his reputation permanently. This is bigger than just family drama." Family drama. That's what I was to them. An old man causing unnecessary complications in their smooth, subsidized lives. I deleted the voicemails and started reading the text messages. They followed the same pattern. Confusion, then anger, then desperate pleading. But scattered among the demands and accusations were revealing glimpses into how they really saw me. Sarah had texted, "Dad, whatever you're upset about, this isn't the way to handle it. You're punishing the grandchildren." Leonard wrote, "You can't just cut us off without warning. We have obligations." Mike's message was the most honest. "I don't understand why you're doing this to us. We depend on you. Depend on me. Not love me, not miss me, not want me in their lives. They depended on me, like I was a utility company or a government service, not their father." The phone rang as I was finishing the messages. Leonard's name appeared on the screen. This time I answered. "Dad, thank God. What the hell is going on?" His voice was strained, and I could hear airport announcements in the background. They were probably trying to get home early, cutting their vacation short because of the financial crisis I'd created. "Nothing's going on, Leonard. I made some changes to my banking arrangements." "Changes? Dad, you can't just change things without telling us. We have expenses, commitments." Jessica had to call her father to wire us money for the hotel bill. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I felt something cold settle in my chest. More embarrassing than forgetting your father's birthday. There was a pause. I could practically hear him trying to remember what day it was, trying to calculate when my birthday had been. "Dad, if this is about your birthday, you're being ridiculous. We were traveling. We were busy. Too busy to send a text message." "You're really going to blow up our finances over a text message?" The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. My birthday, my feelings, my need to feel connected to my children. All of it reduced to a text message that wasn't worth the 30 seconds it would have taken to type. "Leonard, when you called me 6 weeks ago and said you needed $1,500 for an emergency, I transferred that money within an hour. No questions asked." "Yeah, and we appreciated that, but..." "What was the emergency?" Another pause. "What do you mean? You said it was an emergency. What was it?" I could hear him breathing, probably trying to remember what lie he'd told me. There were several things. Car repairs, some bills. You went golfing 2 days later. I saw the pictures. The silence stretched longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was defensive. "Dad, just because I went golfing doesn't mean I didn't have expenses. Life is complicated. You wouldn't understand. I wouldn't understand. At 63, after working for 45 years, after raising 3 children and burying my wife, I wouldn't understand life's complications." "You're right, Leonard. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can take my money for fake emergencies and then call me dramatic for missing my family. I don't understand how you can post pictures from expensive restaurants while telling me you need grocery money. Dad, you're taking this too personally. It's just money. Just money. The money I'd earned working double shifts at the factory. The money Martha and I had saved by clipping coupons and skipping dinners out. The money that represented 40 years of sacrifice and careful planning. If it's just money, Leonard, then you won't miss it. What's that supposed to mean? It means the account is closed. Permanently. I could hear Jessica saying something in the background, her voice sharp with panic. "Dad, you can't do this. We have obligations. Sarah's kids need a mother who doesn't lie about grocery money to fund her restaurant habit. Mike needs to learn that his business problems aren't my responsibility. And you need to figure out how to pay for your own vacations. This is insane. You're being completely unreasonable." "Am I? When was the last time you called me just to talk, Leonard? When was the last time you asked how I was doing?" Another pause. I already knew the answer. "We talk all the time, Dad. We talk when you need money. There's a difference. Look, we can discuss this when I get home. Don't do anything else stupid before then." Stupid. My own son calling me stupid for wanting to be treated like a human being instead of a bank account. "Have a safe flight, Leonard, and figure out how to pay for it yourself." I hung up and immediately turned the phone off again. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness, from anger. Pure, clean anger that felt like it might burn away years of accumulated hurt. I walked to Martha's portrait on the mantel and looked into her painted eyes. She was smiling in the picture, the way she used to smile when she was proud of me for standing up for myself. "You were right," I told her quietly. "I should have listened to you years ago." The phone stayed off for the rest of the day. I spent the afternoon working in the garden, pulling weeds and watering the tomatoes. The physical work felt good, purposeful in a way that writing checks had never been. By evening, I realized something that surprised me. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't waiting for phone calls that might not come, for visits that would be canceled, for acknowledgement that would never arrive. I was just living my life, and it felt like enough. 3 days after I closed the account, Leonard showed up at my door. I was having my morning coffee when I heard his car pull into the driveway with more force than necessary. Through the kitchen window, I watched him slam the door and storm toward the house, his face set in the same expression he'd worn as a teenager when he didn't get his way. I didn't rush to answer the door. Let him wait. Let him remember what it felt like to need something from someone else. When I finally opened it, he pushed past me without invitation, his expensive shoes clicking on Martha's polished hardwood floors. "Dad, we need to talk." "Good morning to you too, Leonard." He spun around, his eyes flashing with barely controlled frustration. Don't start with the pleasantries. You know why I'm here. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and offered him one. He shook his head impatiently. Suit yourself. I'm listening. This has gone too far. Sarah's kids are asking why they can't get new school clothes. Mike might lose his car. Do you understand what you've done? I sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for him to do the same. He remained standing, looming over me like he was trying to intimidate his old man. I understand perfectly. I stopped enabling my adult children. Enabling? Dad, we're family. Family helps each other. You're absolutely right. Family does help each other. I took a sip of coffee and looked at him steadily. So tell me, Leonard, how have you helped me lately? He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. You're here demanding that I help you financially. But when have you helped me? When have any of you helped me? We call you. We visit. You call when you need money. And your last visit was Christmas, 8 months ago. You stayed for 2 hours and spent most of that time on your phone. Leonard's jaw tightened. We have busy lives, Dad. We have responsibilities. So do I. I have a responsibility to myself and to your mother's memory, not to let our life savings disappear into your vacations and restaurant bills. Our life savings? His voice pitched higher. Dad, Mom's been gone for 3 years. That money is yours to do what you want with. Exactly, it's mine, and I want to keep it. He started pacing, running his hands through his hair in a gesture I remembered from his childhood tantrums. This is about the birthday thing, isn't it? Look, I'm sorry we didn't call. We were traveling, we were busy. I'll make it up to you. How? The question seemed to stump him. What do you mean, how? How will you make it up to me? With what? Time? Attention? Or are you planning to take me out to dinner with my own money? Leonard's face flushed red. You're being impossible. I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I'm being completely honest. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator where I kept a magnetic notepad. I pulled it off and handed it to Leonard along with a pen. What's this for? I want you to write down the last time you called me just to check on me. Not to ask for money, not because you needed something, but just to see how your old dad was doing. He stared at the blank paper for a long moment. I don't remember exact dates. Approximately then, last month, last year. The silence stretched between us. Finally, he threw the notepad onto the counter. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to prove that I care about you. You shouldn't have to, but here we are. Leonard slumped into the chair across from me, and for a moment he looked less like the successful businessman he'd become, and more like the confused little boy he'd once been. Dad, I don't understand what you want from us. I want what any parent wants. I want to know that my children love me for who I am, not what I can give them. Of course we love you. Do you? Or do you love what I represent? Financial security? A safety net? Someone who will always say yes when you're in trouble? He was quiet for a moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, there was something different in his eyes, something that might have been shame. Maybe we haven't been the best kids lately. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd gotten from any of them, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this conversation could actually lead somewhere. Lately? I asked gently. Leonard, when was the last time you asked me about my life? About how I'm handling your mother's death? About what I do with my days now that I'm alone in this house? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. You don't know, do you? You don't know that I started volunteering at the food bank. You don't know that I joined a woodworking class at the community center. You don't know that I've been learning to cook because eating frozen dinners every night was making me feel like I was just waiting to die. Leonard's eyes widened slightly. Dad, I didn't know you were. I mean, you never said. When would I have said it? During our 30-second conversations when you're asking for money. During the phone calls where you're in a hurry and just need a quick favor. I could see him processing this, maybe for the first time really thinking about our relationship from my perspective. I've been lonely, Leonard. Desperately lonely. Your mother was my best friend for 37 years, and when she died, I lost the person I talked to about everything. I thought maybe my children would step up, help fill some of that void, not financially, but emotionally. We didn't know. You didn't ask. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the wall clock Martha had bought at an antique shop 20 years ago. Leonard stared at the table and I could see something working behind his eyes. "The money thing," he said finally. "It just became so easy. You always said yes, so we stopped thinking about it. We stopped thinking about what it meant to you. It meant I felt useful, like I still mattered to my family. You do matter. For my bank account, no, that's not." He stopped and took a deep breath. "Okay, maybe that's how it seems. Maybe that's even how it was. But Dad, we do love you. We just got comfortable. We took you for granted." I wanted to believe him. Part of me was ready to forgive everything right then, to restore the account and pretend this conversation had fixed everything. But I thought about Martha, about her warnings over the years, about how enablement disguised as love eventually becomes resentment on both sides. "Leonard, I'm 63 years old. I don't have unlimited time left, and I don't have unlimited money left. What I do have, I want to spend on people who value me as a person. We do value you. Then prove it, not with words, but with actions. Show me that you can love me without my checkbook." He was quiet for a long time, processing what I'd said. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than before. "What if we can't? What if we've gotten so used to the money that we don't know how to have a relationship without it?" It was an honest question, maybe the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. "Then we'll find out together. But Leonard, the money is gone. That chapter is closed. If you want a relationship with your father, it's going to have to be based on something else." He nodded slowly, still staring at the table. "Sarah and Mike are going to lose it when they hear this, probably, but that's their choice to make." Leonard stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where I'd been working. "Your tomatoes look good this year." It was such a simple observation, but it hit me like a revelation. He'd noticed something about my life that had nothing to do with money. "Your mother always said they were the best in the neighborhood." I remember. She used to make that pasta sauce with them every summer. I still have her recipe. I've been making it, but it doesn't taste quite the same when you're eating it alone. He turned back to me, and for the first time in years, I saw my son instead of someone who needed something from me. Maybe I could come over sometime and you could teach me how to make it. I'd like that. It wouldn't be about money, just spending time. That's all I've ever wanted, Leonard." He nodded and headed toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "Dad, I'm sorry. About the birthday, about everything. I'm going to do better." After he left, I sat in the quiet kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could have a real relationship with my son after all. The weeks following my conversation with Leonard brought a strange kind of peace I hadn't expected. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for the next crisis that would require my immediate financial intervention. The silence was unsettling at first, but gradually it became something precious. Sarah called exactly once. Her voice was cold and clipped when I answered. "Dad, I hope you're satisfied." The kids had to start the school year in last year's clothes because their grandfather decided to teach us all a lesson. I felt the familiar pang of guilt start to rise in my chest, but I pushed it down. "Sarah, how much did you spend at restaurants last month?" "What does that have to do with anything?" "Answer the question." There was a long pause. "I don't keep track of every little expense." "Your Instagram posts suggest it was more than you needed for school clothes." She hung up without another word. That was 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard from her since. Mike's response was different. He showed up drunk on my doorstep one evening, swaying slightly as he pointed an accusing finger at me. "You ruined my life, old man. My car got repossessed. I might lose my apartment. All because you decided to be selfish." I stood in the doorway, looking at my youngest son, and felt something break inside my chest. Not guilt this time, but sadness. Sadness for the man he'd become, always looking for someone else to blame for his problems. "Mike, you're 34 years old. When were you planning to take responsibility for your own life? Don't lecture me. You don't understand what it's like out there. I understand that your mother and I managed to buy a house, raise 3 children, and save for retirement without anyone handing us money whenever things got difficult." He laughed bitterly. "Different times, Dad. Everything costs more now. Everything except accountability, apparently." He left that night still angry, still blaming me for consequences that were entirely his own making. I haven't seen him since, though I heard from Mrs. Patterson next door that he moved back in with his ex-girlfriend. At least he has a roof over his head. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after Leonard's visit, I was working in the garden when I heard a car pull up. I looked up to see my grandson Jake getting out of an old Honda, walking toward me with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Jake was 22, Sarah's oldest, and I realized with a start that I barely knew him. He'd been a fixture at family gatherings, usually buried in his phone, but we'd never really talked. Not the way grandfathers and grandsons should talk. "Hey, Grandpa." "Jake, this is a surprise." He kicked at a clump of dirt, not meeting my eyes. "Mom said you cut everyone off. Said you were being mean." I set down my gardening tools and wiped my hands on my jeans. "What do you think?" He looked up then, and I was struck by how much he looked like Leonard at that age. Same dark eyes, same stubborn jaw. "I think Mom's been living off you for as long as I can remember. I think it's probably about time someone called her on it." His honesty caught me off guard. "You do?" "Grandpa, I work part-time at a grocery store while I'm in college. You know how much Mom spends there in a week? More than I make. And then she'd call you crying about not having money for food." We sat down on the porch steps, and for the first time in years, I had a real conversation with one of my grandchildren. "I never told anyone this," Jake continued, "but I heard her on the phone with Dad once. She was laughing about how easy it was to get money from you. Said you were so guilty about Mom dying that you'd pay for anything." The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were surprising, but because they confirmed what I'd suspected but never wanted to admit. "How does that make you feel?" I asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Embarrassed, ashamed. You're a good man, Grandpa. You deserve better." We talked for 2 hours that afternoon, really talked. I learned that Jake was studying engineering, that he'd been paying his own way through school with scholarships and part-time work. I learned that he'd been ashamed of his mother's behavior for years, but had never known how to address it. "I want to keep seeing you," he said as he got ready to leave. "Not for money or anything. Just, I feel like I missed out on having a grandfather because everyone was always focused on what they could get from you." After he left, I called Leonard. For the first time in our relationship, I called him just to talk. "Dad, is everything okay?" The fact that his first assumption was that something must be wrong said everything about our previous dynamic. "Everything's fine. I just wanted to ask if you'd like to come over this weekend. I thought maybe we could work on that pasta sauce." There was a pause. "You're not. This isn't because you changed your mind about the money, is it?" "No, Leonard. This is because I'd like to spend time with my son." "Oh." Another pause. "Yeah, I'd like that." He came over that Saturday with Jessica and their daughter Emma, who was 8. I'd seen Emma maybe a dozen times in her life, always at big family gatherings where she was just one of many grandchildren competing for attention. But that day, it was just us. Jessica helped in the kitchen while Leonard and I worked on the sauce. Emma sat at the kitchen table, coloring in a book and asking me questions about everything she saw. "Grandpa, why do you have so many pictures of that lady?" "That's your grandmother, Martha. She was my wife." "Where is she now?" Leonard and Jessica exchanged glances, but I knelt down to Emma's level. "She died a few years ago, but I keep her pictures up because I still love her very much." "That's sad. Do you miss her?" "Every day. Maybe we could visit more so you won't be so lonely." The simplicity of her compassion, the uncomplicated love of a child who wanted nothing from me except my attention, brought tears to my eyes. That evening, after they left, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and Martha's picture on my lap. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. My phone rang, and I was surprised to see it was Leonard calling again. "Dad, I just wanted to say thank you for today. Emma hasn't stopped talking about her grandpa who makes the best spaghetti sauce in the world. She's a wonderful little girl. I'm sorry I missed so much of her growing up. That's on me, on all of us. We made everything about money and forgot about the important stuff. Well, we can't change the past, but we can do better going forward. I've been thinking about what you said, about proving that we love you without your checkbook. I want to try, Dad. Really try. I'd like that too." Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. My relationships with the people who actually wanted to know me began to deepen. Jake started coming by every Sunday. We'd work in the garden together, and he'd tell me about his classes, his girlfriend, his dreams for the future. Leonard called twice a week, just to check in. Sometimes Jessica would take the phone and we'd chat about Emma's school activities or share recipes. It felt like having a real family again. I started volunteering more at the food bank, where I met other retirees who became genuine friends. I joined a book club at the library. I even started taking piano lessons, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was working or constantly managing family financial crises. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself, not waiting for the next emergency call, not planning my finances around other people's problems, not measuring my worth by how much I could give away. The money I'd been pouring into that joint account was still there, sitting in my personal savings. I used some of it to fix up the house, to take a trip to Ireland that Martha and I had always planned. I even bought myself a new car, something I'd been putting off for years. One evening, as I was reading on the porch, Mrs. Patterson came over with a cup of tea. "Vincent, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem different lately. Happier." I thought about her observation as I got ready for bed that night. She was right, I was happier. Not because I'd punished my children, but because I'd finally learned to value myself enough to demand that others value me too. The people who truly loved me had risen to that challenge. The ones who didn't had revealed themselves for what they were. And for the first time since Martha died, I felt like I was truly living again. 6 months after I closed that account, I woke up on my 64th birthday to something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation instead of dread. My phone showed 3 messages waiting for me. The first was from Jake. "Happy birthday, Grandpa. Can't wait to see you later for cake. Emma made you something special at school." The second was from Leonard. "Happy birthday, Dad. Thank you for teaching me what it really means to be family. See you at 2. The third was from Harold, a friend from my woodworking class. "Vince, hope you have a great day. Looking forward to seeing what you've been working on this week." I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table looking at those messages. Simple words, but they meant everything because they came from people who wanted to celebrate me, not extract something from me. The doorbell rang around 10 in the morning. I opened it to find a delivery man holding a large arrangement of flowers. "Mr. Henderson, these are for you." The card read, "Dad, I know I have a lot to make up for, but I wanted to start with remembering what matters. Love, Leonard." They were sunflowers, Martha's favorite. He'd remembered something personal about our family, something that had nothing to do with money. Jake arrived first, carrying a wrapped box and grinning from ear to ear. "You have to open this one first, Grandpa. Emma worked on it for weeks." Inside was a hand-painted picture frame holding a drawing she'd made of our family. It showed a stick figure version of me in the garden, with Emma, Leonard, Jessica, and Jake all standing around me. At the top, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, it said, "My grandpa's family." But what struck me most was what wasn't in the picture. No Sarah, no Mike. Emma had drawn the family as she experienced it, the people who actually showed up in my life. She drew it from memory, Jake explained. From that day, we made pasta sauce. She said it was the first time she really felt like she had a grandpa. Leonard and his family arrived right on time, carrying grocery bags full of ingredients for a birthday dinner they insisted on cooking for me. Jessica had brought a chocolate cake she'd made from scratch, and Emma bounced around the kitchen, eager to help with everything. As we cooked together, I realized this was what I'd been missing all those years. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but presence. People choosing to spend their time with me because they enjoyed my company. "Dad," Leonard said as we worked on preparing the meal, "I need to tell you something." I looked up from the vegetables I was chopping, suddenly nervous. "Jessica and I have been talking, and we want to start a college fund for Emma. We're not asking you to contribute. We want to do this ourselves. But we wanted you to know that we're trying to break the cycle." "What cycle?" "The cycle of depending on someone else to solve our problems. We want Emma to grow up understanding that family means support and love, not financial rescue." Jessica nodded from where she was stirring something on the stove. "We also want her to have a real relationship with her grandfather. One where she values your wisdom and your stories, not what you might leave her someday." I had to step outside for a moment to compose myself. These were conversations I'd dreamed of having but never thought would actually happen. When I came back in, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, carefully setting out plates and napkins. "Grandpa, Mom says you have pictures of Grandma Martha. Can you show me after dinner? I want to know what she was like." "I'd love to, sweetheart." The dinner was perfect. Not because the food was elaborate. We'd made simple roast chicken and vegetables, but because every person at the table wanted to be there. The conversation flowed naturally, covering everything from Emma's school projects to Leonard's work to my woodworking hobby. After dinner, I brought out photo albums I hadn't opened in months. Emma sat curled up next to me on the couch while I told her stories about Martha, about how we met at a church dance when we were both 20, about how she used to sing while she cooked, about how she could make anyone laugh, even in the hardest times. "She sounds nice," Emma said, studying a picture of Martha in the garden. "I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you. She always said that grandchildren were God's reward for surviving your own children." Leonard laughed from across the room. "She actually said that?" "More than once, usually after one of you had given us a particularly difficult day." As the evening wound down, Leonard helped me clean up while Jessica got Emma ready to leave. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret cutting off the money? Do you miss Sarah and Mike?" I thought about the question carefully. I miss the people I thought they were, but I've learned there's a difference between missing someone and missing the idea of someone. "Have you heard from them at all?" "Sarah sent a card at Christmas. Very formal, very cold. Mike called once when he was drunk, but that was months ago." Leonard was quiet for a moment. "Do you think they'll ever come around?" "I don't know, and I've made peace with that uncertainty. I can't control their choices, Leonard. I can only control mine. What if they wanted to reconcile? What would that look like?" I dried my hands on the dish towel and looked at my son. "The same thing I asked of you. A real relationship, not one based on what I can provide, but on who we are as people. If they're ever ready for that, I'll be here." After they left, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, looking through the photo album Emma and I had shared. I stopped at a picture of Martha and me from our 40th wedding anniversary. We looked happy but tired, worn down by years of constant financial stress as we helped the kids through one crisis after another. I wondered what she would think of the choices I'd made. Part of me knew she'd be proud that I'd finally set boundaries. But I also knew she'd be sad about the cost, losing 2 of our 3 children in the process. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Unknown number. "Hello, Dad?" It was Mike's voice, shaky and uncertain. "Mike, how are you?" I'm in a program, AA, and part of the program is making amends to people you've hurt." I sat up straighter, surprised by this development. "I owe you an apology, Dad. A real one. Not because I want something from you, but because I've been a terrible son. I blamed you for my problems when the truth is I've been running from responsibility my whole life." "Mike, please let me finish. I know I don't have any right to ask for forgiveness. I know I burned that bridge when I showed up drunk at your house and called you selfish. But I want you to know that I understand now. You weren't being mean when you cut off the money. You were trying to save me from myself." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "How long have you been sober?" 4 months. It's been hard, but it's also been the first time in years that I've had to face my problems without running to someone else for help. It's been good for me. I'm proud of you, Mike. I don't deserve that yet, but I'm working on becoming someone who does. Would you like to come over sometime, just to talk?" There was a long pause. "I'd like that. But Dad, I need you to know, I'm not ready yet. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not drunk or running from my problems. But when I am ready, when I'm sure I can come to you as your son and not as someone who needs rescuing, I'll call you. I'll be here whenever you're ready." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone waiting for others to change, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows they've made the right choices. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the small wooden box where I kept Martha's wedding ring. I held it up to the light, remembering the day I'd put it on her finger 51 years ago. "I think I'm finally learning how to be happy again," I told her picture on the nightstand. "It just took me a while to figure out that happiness isn't something you can buy for other people." The house settled around me as I got ready for bed. Outside, the garden Martha and I had planted together was thriving. The tomatoes would be ready soon, and this year I'd have people to share them with. People who wanted to be part of my life, not just my bank account. At 64, I was finally learning what Martha had tried to teach me years ago, that love isn't about what you can give, but about who you choose to be, and the people who truly loved me had chosen to stick around even when I stopped giving them everything they wanted. Tomorrow, Jake would come over for our weekly garden work. Leonard would call to check in. I'd go to my woodworking class and work on the rocking chair I was making for Emma. Simple pleasures, genuine relationships, and the quiet satisfaction of a life lived on my own terms. It had taken me 64 years and the loss of everything I thought mattered to discover what actually did. But I'd found it, and that was enough.